Negar Korkur, the sister of political prisoner and death row inmate Mojahed Korkur, passed away in a hospital in Germany after a long and difficult battle with cancer. Until her final days, she was a steadfast advocate for political prisoners and grieving families, fiercely working to prove her brother's innocence. A post on Negar's Instagram account announced her passing. Negar, the innocent daughter of Iran, has ascended to the heavens. Fatemeh Sepehri, a monarchist political prisoner, is in serious danger. Despite having undergone open heart surgery, she is being held under extremely harsh conditions in one of the most secure and notorious wards of Vakilabad prison in Mashhad, a city in Iran's Khorasan province. According to her mother, there has been no news of her for several days. Khaled Pirzadeh, a monarchist political prisoner, was transferred to solitary confinement on April 15th by order of Hidayatullah Farzadi, the warden of Shayban prison in Ahvaz. According to a reliable source, the transfer was in direct retaliation for a formal complaint Pirzadeh had previously filed against the prison warden with the judiciary. The complaint reportedly focused on the prison authorities' obstruction of his medical treatment. A group of inmates staged a protest in the prison yard in solidarity with Pirzadeh and to object to his isolation. Aryan Shirpishe, uncle of Puya Bakhtiari, one of the slain protesters from the 2019 uprising, is currently serving a 14-month prison sentence in Evin. This is just one part of his case. Another court hearing, this time on charges of insulting the sacred, is scheduled. He was arrested last year by intelligence ministry agents at his home. His phone and electronics were confiscated. Those close to his family believe his arrest is tied to his public presence at memorials for the protest victims and his support for other grieving families. It's not the first time Aryan's been targeted by the regime, but this time they want to silence not just his voice, but his grief too. Laleh Saati, a Christian convert imprisoned in the women's ward of Tehran's Evin prison, remains deprived of adequate medical treatment despite her deteriorating physical condition. She recently fell in the prison yard, injuring 2 fingers on her left hand, the ring and pinky fingers, but has not received proper care for the injury. Her mother's request for medical furlough was rejected by the Evin prison prosecutor's office, citing opposition from the case's intelligence officer, reportedly linked to the Ministry of Intelligence. A separate request to transfer her to a hospital was also denied. Branch 26 of the Tehran Revolutionary Court, presided over by Judge Iman Afshari, sentenced Saati to 2 years in prison and imposed a travel ban. Mohammad Najafi, an imprisoned human rights lawyer held in Tehran's Evin prison, has been permanently banned from practicing law by Iran's High Disciplinary Court for Judges. Although the ruling was issued in 2024, it has only recently been formally delivered to him. The case against Najafi dates back to 2019 and culminated in this final verdict after an appeal by the disciplinary prosecutor. Mr. Najafi has previously been sentenced to over 21 years in prison on multiple charges spread across different cases. He is currently serving his sentence in Ward 4 of Evin prison. Notably, he was sentenced to 10 years, later reduced to 4.5 for giving interviews to foreign media outlets. Despite ongoing health issues, Mr. Najafi has been denied access to specialized medical care. Steelworker retirees in Isfahan took to the streets chanting, "Bankrupt government, enemy of retirees." They protested against their worsening living conditions and the government's disregard for their demands. The retirees voiced their anger over the lack of action from officials regarding their financial struggles, highlighting the deepening economic crisis and the growing gap between the authorities' promises and their actual support for the people. Retired steel workers in Kerman gathered in protest to voice their deep frustration with the worsening economic conditions and the government's persistent failure to fulfill its promises. Many of them said they've spent decades building the backbone of the country's industry only to be left behind in retirement, facing delayed payments, skyrocketing prices, and a lack of basic support. Their message was clear: they're tired of being ignored, and they won't stay silent while their dignity and livelihoods are eroded. Furthermore, retired steel and mine workers in Isfahan took to the streets in protest, marching to voice their growing frustration over unpaid pensions, broken promises, and the worsening cost of living. Their demonstration was not just about money, it was a cry against years of neglect and a fight to reclaim the dignity they say has been stripped from them. Social Security retirees in Kermanshah staged a protest to express outrage over the government's failed policies, worsening economic conditions, and what they described as a collapse of basic human dignity. The protesters condemned soaring inflation, unfair pensions, and the authorities' continued disregard for their most fundamental needs. Holding signs and chanting, they demanded fair wages, social justice, and an end to the economic pressures that have pushed many into poverty. Retirees declared that they are no longer willing to stay silent as their living conditions deteriorate, joining a rising tide of protests by pensioners across the country. Furthermore, a group of Social Security retirees in Shush gathered once again to protest against poverty, inflation, and injustice. With slogans condemning the ongoing economic struggles and inequalities, they expressed their growing frustration with the government's failure to address their needs. The retirees emphasized that the streets were the only place where they could truly demand their rights, as they believe official channels have failed them time and time again. This protest reflects a larger movement of retirees across the country seeking a solution to the worsening living conditions. Retired steel workers in Mazandaran held a protest rally to voice their anger over delayed pensions, worsening poverty, and the unfulfilled promises of Islamic Republic officials. Chanting slogans and carrying signs, the retirees demanded immediate payment of their overdue wages and called for urgent attention to their livelihoods. Many emphasized that despite years of hard labor, they now face economic hardship and neglect in old age. This protest adds to a growing wave of demonstrations across Iran by pensioners and retirees who say they've been left behind by the country's economic policies and rampant mismanagement. A number of contract workers from the Qatsaran Oil and Gas Company once again gathered in protest, voicing frustration over unfulfilled promises and deteriorating living conditions. The workers, many of whom have been protesting intermittently for months, said their demands for fair wages, timely payments, and improved job security have been repeatedly ignored. They condemned what they called the ongoing exploitation of contract labor and warned that they will not remain silent until their legitimate demands are met. A group of retirees in Rasht gathered once again to protest their worsening economic situation. They say their pensions are no longer enough to cover even the bare essentials, rent, medicine, or groceries, and accuse the government of systematically ignoring their pleas. Many held signs demanding dignity, justice, and the right to a life free from poverty, warning that silence is no longer an option in the face of such growing hardship. Social Security retirees gathered outside the Khuzestan governor's office to protest the dire economic conditions they're facing and the government's continued neglect of their demands. Many of them, already struggling with inflation and delayed pensions, say their voices have been ignored for too long. Their presence in the streets was a call for dignity, justice, and the basic right to a life they spent decades working for. As they left Arya Mehr Azadi Stadium, Persepolis fans once again voiced their discontent with the current state of the country by chanting the now familiar slogan, Reza Shah, rest in peace. The chant, often heard in recent protests, reflects a nostalgic longing for order, strength, and modernization under Reza Shah, and a sharp rebuke of the Islamic Republic's failures.